Yo. Welcome back to Raptors Flex Plus. I am your host, Kyle. Gia. And in today's episode, we will be discussing all of the recent trade rumors that also include the Toronto Raptors. And let's be honest, all of the trade rumors right now are coming from Shams. I haven't heard nothing from my man Woj, because anybody that's, knows anything about the NBA the last few years or so, like those are the two main guys, right? Anytime there's trades or free agency or just news, generally two trusted sources around the NBA are Shams and Wojnarowski, Adrian Wojnarowski, right? But Woj is the one right now. Oh, sorry, not Woj. Shams is the one right now that has come out with a few different trade rumors impacting Zach LaVine and the Chicago Bulls, as well as some information around the Sacramento Kings on what they may do either this current season or possibly in upcoming free agency next year, right? And both of those situations, for whatever reason, according to Shams, have the Toronto Raptors in the mix in some way, shape, or form. All right. So we're going to take a look at those today, see what Shams had to say. I'm going to give my opinions. We're going to take a little bit of a dive into the salaries for all the impacted teams and see what we come out with. And just so everybody knows, I'm wearing my throwback DeMar DeRozan Toronto Raptors jersey today because we're talking about trades, y'all. And there's really no bigger trade in Raptors history than the DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard trade. We could argue possibly the trade on draft night, Antoine Jameson going to Golden State and us getting Vince Carter. It's an argument, but it's between those two, right? But anyways, we are in 2023. Will the Raptors make a trade this year? Because a lot of the conversation, just in terms of fans on Twitter, fans in the streets, I mean, let's be honest here. The talks are around Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby being traded. And generally, it's more around Pascal being traded because a lot of folks have talked about just the timeline of Scotty Barnes and building around Scotty Barnes, and OG Anunoby might fit more closely to Scotty Barnes' timeline than a Pascal Siakam, right? But let's see what we got here. Let's dive right into it. Again, so this is Shams when he is discussing the trade for Zach LaVine.
I'm told the Lakers, Heat, 76ers are all expected to have some level of interest in Zach LaVine. I'm told the Raptors are also expected to have some level of interest in LaVine. Masai Ujiri is always aggressive in his approach, and it would be interesting a team with Zach LaVine if you're able to keep guys like Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby. But the Raptors are a team to watch in this as well. But mid-December will be a key date. That's December 15th is the date that a lot of the free agents that were signed over the summer are eligible to be traded. That includes D'Angelo Russell with the Lakers. Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves will be eligible come January. But Zach LaVine has a monster contract. He's in the second year of a 5-year, $215 million max deal. He also has a player option in year 5. So in a lot of ways, this is one of the best contracts for any player in the NBA. I'm told the Lakers, Heat, 76.
Okay, so that was Shams. That was Shams discussing Zach LaVine, right? And he mentioned a few key things in there. Zach LaVine is in the second year of a 5-year contract worth $215 million. Okay, so for all of you that are worried about signing Pascal Siakam, if you're in that camp, right, and you're not wrong or right, I'm not coming out and saying people are wrong or right. What I'm saying is Zach LaVine also has a monster contract. And if you think about trades, generally you have to match those salaries. So that'll be something that we'll be looking at once we start getting into the salaries. Shams also mentioned a date of December 15th where free agents that were signed in the summer can then be traded. So who are free agents from the summer? You're looking at Jalen McDaniels. I think that's pretty much it. Who else did we sign? Garrett Temple. Like, we rolled back pretty much the same team. So the Raptors are in position right now where they don't have to necessarily wait to make a trade. However, you know, they don't have to wait to make a trade, but I don't know, maybe Jalen McDaniels might be a guy that you may want to include in a trade somewhere. All right. Now, I just want to look at one more clip here from Shams so that we can get into the full crux of the conversation. So let's go ahead and get that loaded up. And here we go.
I think this is the first time in a really long time. I mean, maybe when Chris Webber was with the Kings, that you can look at the Kings as like a trade destination. They're going to be involved in every star player, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, maybe Zach LaVine, whenever stars become available, because Monty McNair, that organization, they've done a good job at keeping their assets. They have tradable contracts, so they're going to be a player for stars coming up for sure. I think eventually they could add a third piece.
Hold on, Shams. Why are these two making faces on the end? What's going on?
Shams, you ever been to Sacramento, Shams?
Oh, I knew it was coming.
I'm just saying they have the pieces, they have the assets, and they have a team that could be.
Have you ever?
I have been to Sacramento. I went to their first game against the Warriors. It was crazy packed. It was lit.
Have you ever lived in Sacramento, Shams?
That I've never done.
Now, basketball-wise, you make a great case. But when it comes to free agency, City is very much a part of that decision.
That's why they have to trade for someone.
Got to
trap someone. They got to trade for someone.
It won't be voluntary. I guarantee it. Now, when they get there, they'll probably fall in love with the fan base. Sacramento is one of the great places to play, great basketball environment. You'll probably get stuck there once you're there, fall in love with the culture of the fans and the people, but nobody's just going.
Wow, I did not have Lou on my bingo card this morning, being the City guy. It's always Chandler.
He took Chandler's spot.
Okay. So you just heard them now. All right. They're talking about Sacramento possibly being a destination for free agency. That is what Sham started with. And then Lou Will just did Sacramento dirty, dog. He talking about them like the city is just not popping. I've never been to Sacramento. I know that if the conversation comes down to whether it's a weather destination versus like the East Coast for some of these lesser, I don't want to say lesser, but lesser desired destinations, like you would think that free agents or whoever would prefer to be traded to cities like Philadelphia or Boston or New York, right? And less so like a city like Charlotte. And that's no disrespect to Charlotte. It's just Sacramento, Charlotte, weather, I don't know. Anyways, that has nothing to do with anything, right? Basically, after Lou Will came out and said, like, nobody's going to want to go there for the city. They may fall in love with the fan base and all that type of stuff. Then Sham turned around and said, well, then that's why they got to make a trade. They also mentioned some of our stars, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. Okay, so that is like the quick synopsis now, just based on listening to those two videos from Shams, okay? It's no secret. It's no secret from a Toronto Raptors perspective that Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby could potentially walk away at the end of this year for nothing. And when I say nothing, meaning that you don't get any compensation for them. And I think part of the fan base, most of us in the fan base here in Toronto or Canada that rep the Raptors, I guess we have a little bit of PTSD based on the Fred VanVleet situation, right? Fred VanVleet was able to walk out the door and we didn't get no compensation for him leaving in free agency. So I think a lot of people are probably feeling like, well, the Raptors need to do one of two things. You either need to sign OG Anunoby and trade away Pascal Siakam, or potentially sign both of these players and try to figure out your cap situation another day, right? So depending on what side of the coin you fit into, I think most of us here in Toronto, we don't want to trade away OG Anunoby just because we understand his value on this team as an all-world defender and a butter three-point shooter, right? And the fact that he can guard anywhere on the floor is like a luxury that a lot of teams don't have. And let's be honest here, he's going to command less in terms of a contract signing versus Pascal Siakam. So it's almost like Pascal is just the man out just based on the fact that, hey, like you're going to earn all this bread and this team doesn't seem to be turning the corner that they can do anything more than possibly a first round upset at its ceiling, right? So it's understandable why a lot of fans feel like Pascal Siakam should be the guy that's traded, right? For all those reasons that we just discussed. Now, from the first video where they were talking about Zach LaVine, let's just get one thing straight with that. Sham said a trade like that would be wicked for Toronto. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, would be proper for Toronto if they're able to hold on to Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby and Scotty Barnes. Like, that is not happening. It's not happening. One or two of those guys have got to leave in a Zach LaVine trade just purely based on cap and based on what the Bulls would want to receive back in terms of compensation. Because let's say, for whatever reason, the Raptors are able to figure that out, and all those four players are playing together. Zach LaVine, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam. Sounds like a proper team. I think any of us would take that if we're able to do it. But here's the thing. In order to pull off a trade like that, you're going to have to give off some, like, amazing draft compensation. And why would the Bulls do that? Because at that point now, the Raptors are a team that's probably looking like a second-round team at its ceiling and possibly into a conference championship. So now your first-round picks for the next couple of years are in, like, late in the first round. That's not doing anything for the Bulls. It's not doing anything for the Bulls. So I'm not sure what Shams is talking about there. I'm not sure if he even looked at the cap situation. Now, mind you, I'm not a capologist either, but I can simply just look at that and know that that's not going to happen. Okay? So let's take a quick look at something here. I want to take a look at salaries so that we can get a better idea of what we are dealing with here. So I'm just going to hide that and let's add to the scene. So here we go. Okay. Now, here's the Raptors cap situation. This is from Spot Track, so I don't know how accurate this is or anything like that. But they look to have their stuff on point. So this is what we're using today. Okay. This is the Raptors salary situation. So if you look here on the right, we are basically like, we don't really have much cap space. All right. We're in the negative 28 million this year. Okay. Negative 28 million. So that means that if I understand the cap correctly, if you're under the cap, then you can bring in more money in a trade, right? You can take on bigger contracts. But if you're over the cap, then you have to match salaries somehow to a certain percentage. I'm not exactly sure what that is in terms of what the number is on the percentage, but you basically have to be able to match the salaries, all right? So Pascal Siakam is making $37 million. We could say $38 million this year, okay? OG Anunoby's making $18 million. And Scotty Barnes is way down here because he is still on a rookie deal. So he's at $8 million, right? So you got to make those salaries match somehow, right? Obviously, Pascal's making much more money than OG Anunoby. OG Anunoby at some point in free agency, or whether it's through a trade and then a sign, he's going to be making more than the $18 million that he's making right now. All right. So let's take a quick look at the Chicago Bulls, because Woj also said, not Woj, I'm sorry. Shams also said that Zach LaVine is in the second year of a 5-year contract. Okay. So the Bulls are pretty much in the same situation as us in terms of where they are in the cap. So they're not going to be able to bring back more salary than what they're sending out, right? So it's got to be an even deal for Toronto to be able to bring in Zach LaVine, or for the Bulls to be able to bring in OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam, right? So Zach LaVine is making $40 million this year. So what it looks to me is that it's a lot closer in value, in contract values, to Pascal Siakam than it is to OG Anunoby, just based on what the numbers are saying, right? So it's more likely that it'll probably be a trade involving Pascal Siakam if Zach LaVine is to come into Toronto. And it's not that that's a terrible trade either. It literally might just be that he is a better fit in Toronto. Because my boy actually asked me this like a few weeks ago before the Shams report that, Zach LaVine wanted to be gone and all that type of stuff, right? We were talking about this offline, just kicking it, shooting the shit with my boy, right? And I said, well, yeah, I would take Zach LaVine on our team. He's a good fit. He's a good fit. Now, does he play any defense? I ain't never seen no defense from Zach LaVine in a long time. This guy's a professional scorer, and he can space the floor, which is something that the Raptors don't have right now. We don't have a true floor spacer on our squad. Now, his numbers are down from 3 this year, but that's okay. He's capable. He's more than capable of shooting that 3-point shot with conviction. And he's more than capable of going off for like 50 on any given night in the NBA. Zach LaVine can score the basketball. And he's a high flyer. I mean, this had nothing to do with anything, but that dunk contest that was in Toronto the year that the All-Star game was here, that was probably this generation's wickedest dunk off since the Vince Carter one back in 2000, or was it 2001? So we know that this guy can jump out the gym. Him and Aaron Gordon just set it off that year. Right? So $40 million, you got to be able to match salaries. If you're talking about OG Anunoby, right, that's 18 million. So that's another 22. It's another 22 million that you'd have to make up if you trade OG Anunoby to the Bulls for Zach LaVine. So let's go back now and see what the Raptors can possibly offer here in the $20 million range. All right? Jakob Poeltl? Maybe. Gary Trent Jr.? That seems pretty dope, right? Like, you would love to keep your shooters, but Zach LaVine can offer a little bit more than Gary Trent Jr. in terms of his game, right? He's not just, Zach LaVine, that is not just a shooter. He's a professional scorer. He can get to the bucket. He can finish at the lane. He can go mid-range if he wants. Like, he's a much better player than Gary Trent Jr., respectfully, right? Gary Trent Jr. fills a role on this team. Zach LaVine might be able to fit a couple of roles on this team. Now, Gary Trent Jr. may be a better and more willing defender than Zach LaVine. Maybe Zach LaVine just needs somebody, like a coaching staff, to be like, yo, you're going to go play some defense, eh? You're going to go play some defense. Because I don't see how a player could be that athletic, jumping out the gym like that. You know what I mean? You got moves that you could take it to the bucket and not be able to play a lick of defense. I don't believe it. I think the right coaching staff, the right mentality could possibly turn it around. But the thing is, Zach LaVine, it's not like this is his second or third year in the NBA. This guy's a vet now. He's on a big monster contract, $40 million. So if you're telling me Gary Trent Jr., OG Anunoby, and maybe like a Jalen McDaniels or something. Shams talked about the December 15th date where, you can trade free agents that were signed in the summer. Maybe that's a move that you make. And maybe by that time, Grady Dick can turn it around a little bit. I saw a stat on Instagram the other day. I think it was at Raptors Hub. Go follow him if you're on Instagram. But basically, it was a graphic saying that Grady Dick is shooting the lowest percentage of all picks from the first round in this year's past draft. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know how accurate my my recall is of that particular stat. But if that's the case, I mean, we know the guy can shoot the ball. We know he can shoot the ball. He hasn't had a strong start to his season. So maybe you expect him to pick it up a little bit more in the shooting category, and then you have Zach LaVine that could also pick it up in the shooting category. We lose a lot defensively because you're trading an all-world defender for a guy that doesn't play defense. But possibly that's a trade that you could make, and then I don't know, they might have someone else for filler just for, that we have a roster spot possibly available. Let's see who else they got down here at the bottom of their roster. Yeah, I'll take a Torrey Craig. I'll take a Torrey Craig. Now that actually might be a really good trade, actually, now that I look at it. Right? That could possibly be a good trade because Torrey Craig is a good defender. I remember him with the Denver Nuggets. The guy can defend. So if you're telling me Zach LaVine, Torrey Craig for OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr., and Jalen McDaniels has given us nothing, so I'm not too worried about losing him. Gary Trent Jr. is our sixth man, so now the bench suffers a little bit. And then Zach LaVine can fill a few different roles just from a scoring perspective. And maybe he might be able to step up his willingness on defense. So that's a hypothetical. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying that it's a possibility based on what Shams is reporting, right? And then with the Pascal thing, it's got to line up. So you're looking at a Pascal for a Zach LaVine trade, and then you might have some fillers in here and there. All right. Now let's look at the Sacramento Kings, okay? Because this is a team that Shams started talking about as a free agent destination. And then when Lou Will shot that down, he's basically saying, well, then that's why you got to do a trade. Yeah, okay, Doc. So for Kicks, let's see what they got going on here, right? Remember, Pascal Siakam's at $38 million, and I think OG Anunoby's at $18 million, right? De'Aaron Fox, they're not trading. Forget about it. Possibly Domantas Sabonis could be someone that they would trade out. And I think they would gladly send Domantas Sabonis to Toronto for like Pascal Siakam. The question is do we want to take Sabonis back? Right? Based on so far everything that we've seen so far this year, Pascal Siakam has been getting everything in the paint and at the rim. His mid-range and his three-point shooting has been non-existent so far to start the year. Now, we know that Pascal can extend his range just based on everything that we know from previous years. So hopefully he can get that together. But I'm just saying, based on where we are right now, 11 games in, right? The trade-off isn't that crazy. But I'll say this. In my humble opinion, Pascal Siakam is a better, more dynamic player than Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis ain't spacing the floor for you. Now, we already have challenges with shooting, so they're just going to pack the paint more on us. Like, I'm not like a Sabonis guy for that reasons. So I'm not sure that makes any sense for us. They do have some nice pieces, though, that I would love. Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray's a sharpshooter. I'd love to have him on the squad. But, like, when you start going down their roster, I'm not sure that there's anyone here that I'm, like, loving, outside De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. But De'Aaron Fox is not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. Possibly Harrison Barnes. I don't know what his contract's looking like. Let's take a quick look at his joint. He's signed through 2026 to 2025 season, right? But Harrison Barnes has been around for a while now, man. And coming out of North Carolina, because again, that is my college team, so I remember him playing for them. He was supposed to be a real player in this league. Now he's just solid. He's solid, right? Possibly an OG Anunoby trade, but I think OG Anunoby's better than him at this point in his career. Like I'd rather have OG just for the versatility defending on defense. So I'm not sure anything actually makes sense from a Sacramento Kings standpoint. Malik Monk's a shooter. I'd love to have him. But like there's nobody really here on the roster that I'm loving. I'd possibly like to have like JaVale McGee as a throw-in piece, just to have another big off the bench for situational matchups, right? But I'm not expecting him to be playing every single night, right? And he's also a veteran presence. But these guys aren't making any bread. So the only way that this actually works is if you put together like a package for Pascal Siakam. They're going to have to put together a package for us, right? So say the package is like Harrison Barnes, Malik Monk, and Keegan Murray, right? So let's see here. We're looking at $20 million, and then Harrison Barnes making 17. So those salaries could match. Those salaries could potentially match, but I don't think the Kings are willing to part off with Keegan Murray because he's such a young player that he's ascending. He's showing that he could be a really valuable piece on a contender. And the Kings are trying to catapult their way into contender status, right? Maybe they throw a couple of draft picks in there to entice Masai, right? And then that might make it a little bit easier on your cap situation. I don't know. But that's the only way that I see that happening. I don't see a way that a trade with the Sacramento Kings is like the way to go for Pascal Siakam. But I wouldn't put it past the front office now. I wouldn't put it past the front office. Right? Masai's done some bold things before. Right? And then you're able to keep OG Anunoby and you build depth for your bench. So maybe that's not a terrible trade. But those are the options that I see in terms of trading for those players, right? So, I don't know what the Raptors are going to do. I don't know. I'm just addressing this based on the fact that this is news. This is news. I wouldn't be so opposed to Toronto signing both Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby this season. If you're able to work out the extension, right? And then you go into next year and try to figure out if that is to work again. Because if you're able to do a trade for that next year now, the thing is with teams, right, that may be trading for Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby, because Pascal and OG are expiring contracts, there's no guarantee that Pascal or OG will re-sign with those teams. So that also diminishes the value just a tad versus if you're getting a player that's already signed through for the next 3-4 seasons. So that's something that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about trades and trade value also. Now, in terms of what the Lakers, 76ers, and Heat do, and whoever else was included in that, I mean, they're listing contenders, right? They're listing contenders. Those teams are currently right now in a better contending position than the Raptors are, regardless of what the Lakers' record is, right? Because we saw the Lakers last year. They weren't having the greatest season, and then all of a sudden they just got in the playoffs, and it clicked. It clicked because they have a veteran squad. Guys like LeBron James, damn near 40 years old, still a top 10 player in the league. Anthony Davis, when he's healthy and he's ready, he can be dominant. Then you have Miami Heat. Just, I don't know. They figure it out, man. Eric Spoelstra is, I say this to my boys all the time. I think Eric Spoelstra is like a top 5 coach of all time. Of all time. Including the old school coaches that have beer championships with the Celtics, like Red Auerbach and these guys, yo. Phil Jackson, Greg Popovich. But yo, maybe this is a video for another day in terms of who my top 5 coaches are. But I just want to make this one point. Okay. Greg Popovich has not looked as great from coaching since he lost Kawhi Leonard, y'all. Has not. He's not. And I understand that, the better coaches have players. They have players that make them look good. But you can't tell me that when you look at the Miami Heat that you think Jimmy Butler is a top 10 player in the league. Now, Jimmy Butler is dope. Love me some Jimmy Butler. I'll take him on my team any day of the week. But come on. He's your best player on the team. And they went to a couple conference finals. They went to a finals, 2 finals, I think. Like, yo, like, Eric Spoelstra, man, he's a coach. He's a real coach, yo. But anyways, if you made it to the end of this video, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. If you're not subbed, sub up, like, share, subscribe. Like, again, the algorithms. You got to push the like button if you're watching the video so that we can get this suggested video out to others that are watching similar content, right? And don't forget, I am now also available on Spotify. So if you want to just hear the audio, go and sub up there. And make sure you're subbed up on YouTube as well. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, go sub on YouTube. Sub everywhere you can, yo. Appreciate you. All right? So anyways, man, comment down below if you think, just tell me what you think the Raptors should do regarding Zach LaVine. Is the Sacramento Kings' interest in Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby legit? Do you think that the Raptors should pursue a trade with one of those 2 teams? Let me know. I'll respond back. Let's chat about it. But anyways, until next time, you know the flex. It's your boy, and I'm out.